Morning everyone. Today I'm going to make a curtain pole for this bay window. It's going to be a pole that is bent around the corners that you can see behind me, and it's going to stop at the ends into the wall, looking very neat and tidy. You can buy kits to do this, they're not very good. You can buy straight curtain poles which tend to expand and have two sections with a bump in between, it's a bit annoying. Or if you were a professional, then you would make one and it would fit perfectly, which is what I'm going to try and do today. So this is it before, and this is what it looks like after. It's a single one-piece tubular metal curtain pole that I've bent and put in place. It runs well. It looks nice. Yeah, and it's a lovely job. Right. Let's go downstairs and I'll show you what we're going to need and make sure you've got all the bits before we start. Okay, so this is the kit that we need. There are two pieces of pole here. These are both 3 meters long. I'm hoping to get away with using one, but you can use two parts and connect them in the middle with a central solid piece of timber or something that stops them twisting. Very important that if you do have two sections, that they cannot twist against each other. So I've got two pieces. I'm going to try and do it in one piece, and we'll see how we get on with that. I've got some metal curtain hooks because the old plastic ones are all brittle. These are the pole hooks that screw into the wall. There's 3 of these needed. I've got 2 packs of 2, one in the center, one at each end. You can't have any more because the rings can't get past them. And when you create this, you have one ring outside and all the others inside, and then obviously the center one, and then the same thing reflected the other side. These are the rings. I bought 60 of these. I'm actually planning on using probably 50, so there'll be 25 on each curtain. That sounds like a lot, but actually once they're up there it's not. They all came from Screwfix, as did the Fortress Trade galvanizing spray. It's a silver paint. I was looking for a silver paint, that was the one that had good recommendations. I bought some ends for my copper, so if I chose to, I could just cut them square and put a neat end on them. I'm not planning on doing that. I'm actually planning on cutting them at an angle so they look like they disappear into the wall. But we'll see how we get on with that. I'm also going to do a little short curtain pole, which I'll have a finial on as well. So I'll show you how to do that too at the end. Right, moving on to equipment. Here's a selection of stuff. Now, very importantly, you need a step ladder, which I haven't got here. It's in my shed, so I'm going to get that out. The pipe bender at the back here with a former. That's because I'm using copper, and that's 22mm copper bender, so it's nice and easy. The steel wool because I'm going to need to roughen this before I spray it and just give it a clean off. I put a spring here, and that's to remind me that actually you don't have to use one of these pipe benders. You can use a spring. It's tricky, but you can do it. The benders are about 30-40 pounds, so I would buy one of those. If you're into DIY, then you're going to need one anyway. Hacksaw to cut the tube. This is a square which is adjustable, and it's going to tell me the angle. I'll just put a piece of wood on there so that it fits into the corner. I believe mine is 45 degrees. You need to check yours because it actually determines the bend that you're going to put on the tube. So make sure you work out what it is using trigonometry or measurements or whatever, and draw it out. Next thing to do is to measure up the bay, jot down all the measurements on a pad, and then bring those back here, and I'm going to transfer that to the table so I can see in plan what the actual bay looks like, and I can then bend the tube to meet the same dimensions out here where I've got lots of space. So let's go and measure up. Okay, I've got all my gear upstairs. I have a sketch. It's not an amazing sketch. It's a good enough sketch. It has all the dimensions I need to take, and I'm going to add the angles onto this as well. Just those internal angles here and here. So I've got those from my square, which obviously isn't a square, it's angular. This isn't to scale. This isn't clever. It's very simple. but it allows me to take down all the measurements I need. So I'm going to take that distance there, which might not be relevant, but I'm going to get it anyway. We're going to have this one here, we're going to have this distance here, and this distance here, and that one there. Now, bear in mind that my curtain pole is not going to be the same dimensions as this, because actually it's going to step in, sharing the reduction on both. So it's actually going to be sort of shorter on this length and slightly longer on that length to get out to here. So it gets a bit complicated, which is why we're going to try and map it out downstairs. Anyway, for now, let's take these measurements. Okay, these are the measurements for my bay. Now, as you can see at each end there, these measurements are different to each other. It is not symmetrical. There's a slight variance on the angles. So it's worth doing this and making sure that we get all of these dimensions down properly. You might have noticed that I measured everything twice from slightly different places just to make sure I was getting it right. I also used a laser distance measure between the two extremes to get that 2082 millimeters. That's obviously over 2 meters across this bay, which isn't massive. You know, that's okay. So yeah, there we go. That's ready to go. Let's get this downstairs and set it out on the table. Okay, so this may seem like a slightly odd thing to do, but what I'm actually going to do is recreate this on the table here, full size. So I've got useful lines here, so I'm going to use the back gap as a sort of guide for the back of the bay. So I'm going to make this bay-shaped table. So I'll start with one of these pieces of paper that's going to be that corner, and I'm going to put it over here. I am, of course, assuming that my table is more than 2.1 meters long. Now I'm going to do another one here, and between these, and marking on them is obviously the 1090. About here, and it kind of needs to come off here. I suppose I could use the midpoint of the table. That would be sensible. Now let's see how we go. I may have to move this. So 45 degrees on the corner, and then we're going 710 off that. Now logically, if I've laid this out accurately, the final measurement is a check. That's this measurement on here that goes across the whole bay. That's 2 meters and 82 millimeters. So if I take my tape measure down to there, onto here. I'm actually reading it at 206, so we're 2 centimeters shy, which means that the angles I've introduced are obviously too great, too small. I need to splay the ends slightly. So I'll recheck these angles, and I'll make sure that I draw them again so that it splays it another centimetre each side. Right, okay, I've done my remeasuring, and you can see on here that this This is now the finished line, and the same over here. So it did change slightly. I did some very accurate measuring of these angles, and I double checked it with the distance. So I'm now going with these. That is a good replication of what I've got upstairs. And what I'm going to do, we'll just focus on this one for now. I need obviously if this is the bay, then the curtain pole is going to come down somewhere in here and stop against the wall, because this is the wall. And then at the corner over here, it's obviously going to come along here and turn and go down here. So I kind of need a line parallel to this. And when we look at how far away that would be, we can actually put, these are the hooks that I bought. So the distance off the wall, which in this case is about 75 millimeters when it's in its smallest position. These are adjustable, so they will come out. You can adjust them up to, looks like about 105, but at the smallest they're about 75. What I'm going to do is allow an extra centimetre on that, so I've got some adjustment for any inconsistencies or irregularities. So I'm going to go to 85 to the centre line of my pole, and that's obviously the same here, and it's the same over there, same everywhere. So 85 off here. It's here. 85 off there. Oh, it's actually up here. 85 is here. 85 off there. It's here. And over here. Draw a line between these points. So we've got 85 on here. Scoot. Making that line across the back. That now is here too, and now I need 85 across onto here. So our curve is going to come along this line, curve around here, and then carry on along the back. And when it reaches up here, it's going to be cut at an angle into the wall. I think that's pretty straightforward. So the next thing is to do the bends in the copper. I put the umbrella up because it started raining. Let's get a copper, let's start bending. Okay, so when I look at this new distance here, from this corner to the end, furthest point, roughly 78 centimetres, 780. So I need to go longer than that to the midpoint of my bend. But obviously the midpoint of my bend is tricky to predict when I'm using the bend tool. So what I'm going to do is make sure I do put a bit of excess on this. So we'll make sure that it's 78 to the start of the bend, and we'll go from there. So, I've got 45 degrees on here as well, which is rather useful. So I may be able to use this as a guide. The mark is going to be close to the start of this wheel. In fact, I'll put it on the start of the wheel. What we could do, it's quite a useful thing to just to show you what happens with this. If I mark this at centimetre intervals, I'll just mark 20 of those. The mid one was 10. Okay, nice big squeeze and it'll start bending. Cool. I was being guided by a mark that's on the side of this. I've used it before, so I'm quite familiar with it. That's pointing at the midpoint, and this is kind of lined up with it. It's not brilliantly accurate, but what you can see, I put the square over it. It's kind of easier when you have something to guide you. If I put this on the line of the pipe going down there, like so, then the inside line of this is then following the centre line of the pole, which is good. If anything, I've slightly overcooked it, but that's fine. It's springy, I can stretch it out again. Interesting to see these marks from the start point, which is actually, it's about 5mm in from the first mark. Tricky to see, but this first mark is actually 1 centimetre before it started pulling in. Though it does stretch out there. And we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 centimetres of bend, and there's kind of one that's straight either end of it. Yeah, interesting stuff. Okay, so now I could take my piece of tube and that's now placed on my template. And what we're seeing at this end is it just about passes over the edge where the line is. So that's where I would cut it off at an angle to make it fit within. I'm going to do the other bend first. It's also a little bit too much, as I thought. So this needs to come back a little, which I can probably do with this just by leaning on it, just like that. There we go. So that's now following that line. Like so. It's under the centre. So if we look along this, you can see the blue line, and that lines up down the far end there as well. So this angle here is now accurate for this corner. In fact, if I move it to the original inner line, so it's correct over there, and here, we can see that this is now following here. You can see the small gap here where it radius is round, and when we bend the other end we're going to have to try and get this position exact. Now if you're not confident about getting that position exact on one piece of pipe, there's a very easy solution, and that is to cut it at the midpoint. You see, at this point here there will be a bracket halfway between this corner and this corner. We have a mid one, and that's where the curtains come together and close. So if we wanted to, we could cut this at this point, and obviously measure it very carefully so that we're cutting it at the midpoint of the bay. But if you cut it at that point, you could then just make another separate bend on another piece of pipe, bring the two together when you cut the right length, and screw through into a wooden dowel within the pipe that would hold them together. I would avoid putting an external pipe fitting on it because that's bulky and the rings would then bump against it. Better to put something inside and have it go up against it. I've done that before, it works very well. It's a definite option. In this case I'm going to attempt to bend it to suit this corner in addition to this one here, and I'm going to use the knowledge that I've found from marks that I've drawn. So I know that we start bending 1 centimetre into the machine, and I can measure, based on this one, I can measure how far from the corner I need to be to start bending to do that. So let's just put this on the centre line, like so, centre line, like so. Right, now I can take my measurements and mark where I'm going to start bending. It's all very exciting. So, looking at this one, my bend point is here. Start of the bend is here and here, and so I know that we're obviously as expected. We were 50 or so before on the tool. So I need to be about 50 back from that point over here. You can see how this could go horribly wrong. So bend point is here, and I need to start it 50 back here. So that's where the end of my former in the bending tool will be. Then all I've got to do is make sure I get the whole thing straight, because if your bends are out of alignment, the whole thing will be all over the place. Bending from this point that way. Right, it's taking a bit of time because I want to make sure it's right, but under here we've got the line, and it's next to the former. Let's just push it there. Okay. Right. So that's kind of tight in the machine, but when I look down here, I've got to make sure that the pipe is straight, so take the weight off, just allow it to twist straight. The whole thing needs to be straight because, sorry, hard show you what's going on. The far end that's already bent needs to stick down. If it doesn't, and I bend this end, they'll bend off in different directions. So one will go up, the other will go down. So this is all got to be straight, which I believe it is. Just double check my line, and that's correct. Right, I think I'm ready to go. So flip this over, holding tension on it. There we go. I'm going for 45 degrees again. Which I think is about there. Again, maybe slightly overdone it. Have a look. What we have now, this is over the line, and it's kind of over the line up there. It's perhaps running out a little. When I come over here, you see that's off the ground, and the reason for that is the twist that I've put across it. Now that can probably be taken out in the mountings, but it'd be nice to make sure it's straight. So just following a line around this is the line will run parallel. Obviously you can move it forward, but it's a parallel line. Just checking. Parallel line, and then it runs off from this point here across to there. So I think we're okay. It's looking good. I think we're safe to cut that. Right. What I'm going to do is pop it onto the line and make sure it's good. I think I might draw an extra line next to it that's a centimetre away so I can see inside and maybe outside as well. Okay, so now we can, I've got the tube laid out over the markings. You can see under here I've got kind of 3 sets of markings now, so it's really easy to see where this is. You can see how the importance of this template is really helping us. So this now comes to this end where you can see this line is the line of the wall. So that's the line of the bay, that's the line of the wall. The pole is going to come up against the wall. So I'm actually going to cut the pole at this point. Like that. And because I know this fits, I'm also going to cut it here. Just in case. Here's a nice little double check. What was it I said? 2082 should be there, which it is. So when we look at the marks, we have a mark 2082 and we have a mark at the end on the same line, and that was the width of the bay. So this should now fit beautifully if I cut it in those places, take it upstairs and check it. We'll do that first. Okay, so I've checked it upstairs and to these lines it fits to the bay. So I'm just going to cut these off at the correct angle. I've clamped it so they can't move easily. I'm going to just give a little bit of excess because I'm worried it might not be a snug fit. Now I have set this up so it's still 45 degrees. I'm using the table as a guide. It's straight along the back. It's following the template. It's just off the template. There we go. So that's now cut off 45 degrees. The surplus is very useful for putting in the ground and launching rockets on bonfire night. Just deburring with a bit of sandpaper. Don't want sharp edges. Right, I'll do the other end. Right, that's done. Now we'll take it inside and make sure it definitely fits. What I'm going to do next is wire wool it. I'm going to just rub the surface with some very fine wire wool all over to give it a key for some paint. Okay, I've hung this from the umbrella. I've been shaking this paint for a long time. It's been wire-wooled everywhere. Hopefully, we're ready to spray. And try and avoid getting this on everything. Quite thick, this. Nice, but thick. One of my less nice commenters once said, you should never shake the can between sprays. But I always thought it'll all sink to the bottom and settle. Don't you need to keep on shaking it? Tell me. I'd love to know. Tell me why. Okay, this stuff, it says shake it thoroughly at least 2 minutes. Repeat shaking at regular intervals during the use. You see? During the use. Yes. And apply sparingly from a distance of 20 to 25 centimetres, which is what I've been doing. Apply 2 to 3 light coats as necessary to achieve total and even coverage, waiting 15-20 minutes between each application. Oh, okay, come back in 15 minutes. Okay, in for coat number 2. Right, we'll wait for coat number 3. Just going to move the hanging position. It's a small thing really, but it gets rid of the little mark where the bare metal was visible from where it was hung there. It should be covered by the middle bracket, of course. Coat number 3. I think that's that. Let's leave it to dry, and then we'll put it up. Right, this has been drying for several days now, actually, and it's ready to go. So let's take it upstairs. Let's take down the old curtain pole, make it good, and we'll go through the fitting process. Hopefully you're still with me on this one. Okay, so that's the redecoration complete. The next thing is to put up those brackets, those 3 brackets. What we've got to do here that's really important is make sure that where those brackets are going is completely supported. I've redecorated this, I actually refurbished this area a while ago, so I know that there's timber behind the plasterboard that I can screw into. But even then, the plasterboard might crush a bit, it might squash, it might lead to it coming loose and wiggling. So we've really got to be sure that these brackets are supported well, because there's only 3 of them. The curtains are quite heavy. So if you need to, chop out, put some blocks of wood in, make sure there's decent support there before those hooks go up, and then obviously those brackets go up, and then make sure that it's decorated and looks good before you start. So onto the brackets. Right, I now need to mark a point for the mid bracket, so I'm going to just measure this up. Excuse the wobbly camera. Mounting a camera on a ladder is not an easy thing to do, so I'm just going to have a look at this. I'm going to mark a point which I think is halfway. This one's at 54. Just flip this around, get the tape the other way, and we're at 55 there to the mark, so the centre point is actually about here. Doesn't need to be absolutely exact, but it's good enough. I'm also looking at the height of this. Now I know that there's a plasterboard underneath, so I don't want to screw into the bottom 12 millimeters. So my fixings have to be a distance into that. Also looking across at my picture rail, which I might reinstate above this, and that's up to 60 from the bottom. So if I were just to sort of look at where that is, that's sort of this height. Let's just double check that. Yeah, 60. So if I were to hit my bracket here and go put that to the base of the picture rail, then I could use this as a template for the others. You can actually see through to the bottom, make sure this is level, and mark where the screws are going to need to go, just in the bottom of it there. I now have 2 fixings that I can screw into the wall. In this case, there's actually an eyelet in the top of it, so I can put the top screw in and then hook it over. And hopefully I can do that without causing too much disruption. I could obviously pilot these using a small screwdriver or something, just to stop any damage. Let's see if I can do it without causing damage just by winding it in. There's a bit of a risk. I'm not pushing very hard on this. I'm just kind of running it. So it's pulling out the plaster and dropping it on the floor, which I'll sweep up later. That's now going into the wood, which is great. I'm going downhill slightly with this, but it doesn't really matter. Wash the dust off later as well. And now I should be able to hook this over here. You can see why they're slotted, because you can't actually get the screwdriver on it once it's in. There we go. So that's now looking pretty strong, and this, with its adjustment, can move in and out, and obviously that will take up any inaccuracy in the cutting of my tube, which is great. That's just final bit on there. Just make sure that this is definitely square, and I'm going to wind in that bottom screw as well. Right, and there we go. Now, as I said before, only you know what's behind here. Only you know how strong this is. I know that this is strong enough behind here. You know, this is screwing into very hard wood, and that is very, very strong. So I'm quite comfortable with that. It is going to be the midpoint of the curtains. It's going to take a lot of weight. So bear that in mind when you're doing this fixing. Now on to the other 2. Okay, this is the left-hand end. Here's the picture rail I was talking about. I might continue this along, so I do want it to be beneath, and as you can see, I measured to, it's actually 62 to the underside there. So as long as I'm below that here, I'll be fine. This, when it sticks out, is, you know, even if I put it right at the end, there will be a gap that the last ring could go on. So I can actually put this quite close to the end. And I don't want it to be too far out because there's only one ring behind and the curtain obviously bunches up against this. So we don't want it to stop it pulling back all the way. So I do want it over here. I might space it off about 40, maybe 40 millimeters. And I need to make sure that we're below 60 as well. So let's just mark this. So 40, that's there. And 60 up from the bottom, which is what I was working to. Below that, that will be the top of it. I could even, if I'm feeling very generous, I could actually use my square and run a line through this, and that gives me an upright for my markup. So when I put this here with the top of it to that line, I can then centre that, because it doesn't go down far enough. There we go. A bit longer there. And I offer this up. I can see that line running down the centre inside here for when I'm marking my screw positions. And I can then make sure that those fall on that line when I fit it. So that's my second one. I'll do the third as well, and obviously I'll screw these in. Okay, moment of truth. We have the curtain pole from downstairs. And just try and carefully bring it up without smacking it too much against the wall. Actually, before I do this, let's just slide on the hooks. There we go. Because once it's in there, I don't really want to have to lift it off again. So remember, I'm doing 25 here, so 24 of these need to go on, and then what I'm going to do is put the last one the other side of this final bracket, because that's the one that's going to sort of stop the curtain from disappearing off into the middle from the end. It's going to anchor it, as it were. So that's the 24. Let's pop that along there. Don't want them past the midpoint. Last hook on. There we go. Last hook on. And hopefully you can now wiggle. Get this on. There we go. Right. Okay. It's in position. The hoops are running. It's nice and strong. So let's just move around and see how we got on with the rest of it. Now, I can see that it's uneven at the moment. That's because this one is pushed right in, and this one is kind of wiggled. So I need the whole thing to kind of move around to make it more even. There we go, that's better. Hopefully I can start getting this balanced out. I'm going to look from beneath as well, make sure it's even. Yeah, it's looking good. These as we a bit further. Those are over here. This, I think. So then what we can do is draw these in to make it tight. Obviously where it's hitting the wall, that's my finish on this one. I'm going to do a finial on the stop end one at the other end. But these are looking pretty good. This needs to go in a bit and the other end needs to come out a bit. So I'm going to see if I can just drop that across a bit like that. If I now stop this, it's just over halfway in. I'll have a look at the others. So there we go, we've got that there. It's all looking quite good. if I go for a similar distance, that would be about there. And I can see the middle one's kind of coming into the same sort of place. So that's good. It's halfway in, is about there. Like so. Now, what I've forgotten to do is put the curtain rings on this other side. I've got them all on this side. They're all ready to go. But I didn't put them on the other side, so I now need to get them in there. So these adjustable hooks are actually really useful for setup. I'm not sure how good they're going to be long term. I've not really used adjustable hooks before. I can now ease this away from the wall and just slide these on. You see there is a risk that the silver paint will mark the wall. It's unfortunate, but I'm trying to keep that to an absolute minimum here. And this last one, which has to be the other side of the bracket, I'm going to leave that one there. Put my bracket again, and screw bracket goes on here. Right, now, so what we have here is the bracket that now looks like that. There's a screw underneath that tightens the, in to clamp the tube, so I can actually get in there behind underneath and do that. Just wind that up, doesn't have to be very tight, but that'll just stop it lifting out. See that going in there. Just want to nip that up, so that's good. So that's a really neat corner, and this is coming in, it's planting against the wall. The curtain can sit on this, there's a little bit of flex in it if you need it, and hopefully this can all work as planned. And there we go, all in place. One fully formed single piece curtain pole. So let's hang the curtains. Okay, so this is the top of one of my curtains. I've washed my hands. Wash your hands before handling curtains. Curtains need to be treated with respect. If I flip this over, I've kept these on the bed left and right as you look at it from inside. And you can see in here we have these, that's where it's tied off to rumple it, because it'll only ever expand to the point where it's tied. We have these old plastic hooks. They look a bit like that. These get brittle with age. They're very cheap, and they're not great. So as I said earlier, I bought these metal ones made by Renaissance. Hopefully they'll last forever. Hopefully they won't rust or cause any other trouble. What I'm going to do is put them in place of the others. So we need it to be, yeah, that way around. And then that will hold the curtain up, like so. Thinking about it, the top of the hoops is going to be sort of on the top of this, and it'll hang down the bottom. So I actually need to invest in moving these, and that means coming up to the, if it's that one there that I can use. I've got a hole there. I don't know if that's a hole up there. It is a hole there, so I can go in over. How did that come out? There, okay. So I can actually go in the top here. Oh, wrong way around. In there, that way. There we go. So the hoop from the hook will sit sort of on top, like so. And that'll hold it up. What I now need to do is look at 25 of these. So I'm going to count the existing ones, see how many there are. If there are 25, I'll replace them where they are. if there's more or less, then I need to adjust the number of gaps between each of them. So I'm going to do that, and I'll put it on a fast track. Okay, 25 done, ready to go. Let's hang this curtain. So as I do this, I'm going to take the weight of the curtain on one arm whilst I start the hooks, because you can't hang the whole weight of the curtain on one or two hooks. So really important, you take the weight while you load it onto the hooks. This should now draw as you expect, and it does. So a perfect curtain. I may adjust that little end there, I don't want light getting through. But you can see that's really hanging well, that looks pretty good. Let's do the other one. I've actually decided to jump the second hoop off to the other side of the bracket on these so that it closes the gap a bit better with the wall. So I'm just going to do that at each end, and then I think we're done. And there we go, that's the curtains rehung. So they run well, they look good. Yeah, it's a professional job, and I think Mrs. Wardell's going to be very pleased with that. The curtains are a bit rumbled where they've been lying on the bed for a while, but they'll straighten out, and that's hanging really nicely. It's a professional job. It looks great, and yeah, I'm really pleased with that. Now, obviously, you could have done different colours. I could have sprayed this black. It could have been whatever colour curtain rail I like. The next job is to do the other curtain rail, which is that little curtain in the corner there. That's a pair of curtains. The left-hand end of it's going to just stop against the wall, but the right-hand end is going to need a finial, and that's the one I mentioned earlier, where I'm going to just spin a finial on the lathe and fit it onto the tube. So I'll show you how I do that. I'm going to fit the curtain pole first, and I won't record that. It's just exactly the same process, it's just a straight one. Right, so here's the finished curtain pole. We have our hoops ready to go. There's one this side over here. It goes into the wall as I said it would. And on this end, we have this extended piece, which is going to go inside a finial, an end that's pretty. So I've got my other hook that will stop the curtain this side too. So I'm going to turn a finial to go on there. Obviously the 22mm tube needs to go inside it. To hold it in place, I'll probably use a screw from above just to drive in to fix it and stop it pulling off. That's my idea. Let's go downstairs and let's make it. Welcome back to the workshop of dreams. I'm going to use a plate on the lathe, and I'm going to put this block, which I've marked, onto it. I'm going to rough this down to a sort of round. This is about 3 by 3. Rough it down to round and drill a hole down the centre for the tube to go in, and then I'll create something kind of ball-like, I suspect. But we'll see. We'll see what comes out of it. It's a very natural process, turning. Right. First things first, let's get this onto here. Just gonna get some screws. I don't want to have long screws on this because obviously I don't want to have them interfering with the work. So, but I will use quite a few of them. Let's get some short screws. Right, 25mm screws. So I know I can't go into the last sort of 20mm because about 20mm of these poking through. And 2 on the outside. I'm going to do 4 near the middle. Definitely not going to let go.
Maybe I'll do these out. Do them all, Steve, do them all. Definitely not. Stand up for it.
Good. Now I need to set up stock and the rest. Just about clears. It's soon going to get smaller. Stock. Okay. Test run. So you can see when this is turning, there's a sort of light and dark flickering at this end. That's because there will be flats where it's not quite gone round yet. This part here is clearer, so if I stop this, you'll see. Yeah, so there we go. So we've still got some of the original flat there. So the darker colour is showing up when it's rotating. It's also not gone anywhere near here, but you remember 20mm was my rule. So we're nearly sort of round on this. Let's squash that one in. Okay, I want to get this edge flat as well, certainly to the point where the drill goes in. And when I'm turning this, I'm actually looking at the top to see how flat I am and the shape that I'm creating. Okay, let's just put a edge on it. Right here. I want this end to be flat. Certainly near the middle where the hole's going to be. So that's good. Then what we can do is, obviously we can drill a hole, but we can also start to create the shape. I think what I'll do is do the hole first too. I'm going to find a 22mm. Stop this running. We'll find a 22mm bit and we'll put the headstock in it. There's still a bit of a flat there. Not a bad bit of wood. We can sand it to make it smoother at the end. Okay. Ooh. And take the dead stock out, put in a chuck. That's in there. Oop, shove that back in here. Oh, but rather long 22mm bit. Right. Taking this in nice and gently. It's a very sharp bit, so it's not going to have any trouble. And it's only a softwood. Carefully wind it out, make sure it doesn't fall out. Noisy old beast. That'll do now. Save any disruption. So we're going in that far at the moment. There's obviously a point on the end of the drill bit too, so need to be careful I don't go any further, otherwise we'll go past the end of the piece when it's finished. I need to check that the copper will fit. Get the headstock out of the way, which it will. So that's looking good. There we go. So it's kind of nice and straight as well. Good. Okay. Right. Next job. Right. What I'm going to do now is just move the this a little. Get it closer. There we go. So I think I'll put the dead stock back into this if I can. Need to oil that. There we go. Just move the bearing. And that should be ready to go. Which it is. Now I'm going to turn something pretty out of this. So let's a smaller gouge and see where we go. created here. Looks well, looks a bit like a fur cone really. I'm just going to tidy it up a bit more before I go any further. I could actually pop you over here. Find your solid stone. There we go.
That's nice. I'm just going to speed the whole thing up a bit. See if we can give it a bit of a polish. Crikey, that's heavy.
Sand off. Give it a bit of support. It's quite weak where I've started parting it. Okay, this is looking quite nice. It's going to be an interesting piece. I just need to sever it at the end, which I'll do with a just a parting piece. Let's see if I can stand you there to have a watch. Annoying when it falls off like that, but never mind. That is the finished article, and when that's on the end of the curtain pole, you can see that it's going to look like a nice impressive end. So what I need to do is spray this. I'll just finish scrubbing this end because it's obviously I've left a nipple on there. That was kind of deliberate. I did intend leaving a bit of a nipple on there, but I'm going to sand it flat and then I'll spray it. This is just 120 grit, it's nothing special. I don't need it to be really smooth. It is, sort of fairly rough. That zinc paint is fairly rough. There we go, that's okay. Just looking at how far this is into here, if I put my thumb on here and pull this off, that's the distance we're going up inside there. So it's a fairly deep hole. It's using up most of the excess upstairs. It's good. Right, let's spray it and see how it comes out. Do it being a bit taller, couldn't you? And because this is a finial, no one's ever going to touch it. I'm actually going to go straight into the Galv paint. It might not work, it might flake off. If it does, then I'll take it off and I'll have another go. But I'm actually going to go straight into it. Before I do, though, I'm going to drill a little hole through here because we wanted a mounting to stop it. We want to be able to screw into the pipe. So I'm just going to drill a small hole through there that I can put a screw in from above later. So I'll choose the grottiest side, because that'll be above then. This is just with a 4mm drill, just to give it a clearance. I've gone through the copper just to prove the point. Don't need. And I'm going to get just a 7mm, so that whatever head goes in there can sink in. It's going to be a small screw. I'd rather it weren't protruding. Right, so there we go. So we've now got a little fixing hole, and obviously I'll need a pilot. Unless I use a self-tapper and I can actually cut straight into the copper upstairs, I'll need to drill a small hole up there. Right, on with the paint. I've got my same paint again, and I'm going to just use it on this, like this. Where there's indents and grain, I can build it up a bit. I can even touch that in if I need to with a brush in a small container. That's pretty cool. I think I'll leave it to dry. You know, I say to people when they're making things that they're not going to be perfect. Handmade objects are desirable because they're unique, they're one-offs, and there will be flaws in them. They'll never be quite as you expected. In the case of this, there were too many flaws, and I've actually filled them with filler to try and improve it, but it'll still be a beautifully unique piece with its own character. It just won't have quite as many grain holes where they were. So I'm just taking a bit of wire wool to where I've pressed the filler into it just to smooth it off, and once it's properly dry I'll give it another coat. Okay, coat number 3. And I think I'm going to leave that to dry. The curtains are hung. The end is complete. I'm now going to fit this using my drill to drill that hole through the actual pole. So let's grab the drill, pop the end on. There we go. Looks pretty cool. One of the spare screws from the brackets. And there we go. I think that looks pretty cool. I think my work here is done. We have 2 sets of curtains that are done. Poles work great. And yeah, I think it's a nice job. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'll answer them for you. And yeah, well, tell me what you think of it. Subscribe to the channel if you like it, and give it a like. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye bye.